Mind practice and how to do it. If you're listening to this, you probably want more detail on how to actually do shamatha meditation. You're past the sales pitch, and here are the details for those of you who can't find an authentic local center. Start off with when to meditate. It's often considered important to meditate daily, or at least with some kind of uniform regularity. And this is why. Regular meditation is like taking our daily temperature. Each meditation session, no matter how brief, samples our state of mind. You sample it, you see how it is. If there's no regularity, if there's no sampling, then we have no way to measure how calm or how wild our mind is. If we sit a lot one day and none the next, 2 days is very difficult to gauge or remember just how we were, how we're doing. And consistently watching your mind is very much a part of meditation. So the whole point here is sampling, getting to know the mind. I've found it best to sit some each day, preferably in the morning. And that's only because intervening, distracting events of great importance, it seems, they haven't come up yet in the morning. And so when they do come up, I end up skipping meditation that day for one good quote-unquote reason or another. And I'm naturally brilliant at finding excuses to skip my practice session. Now, how long should we meditate? Basically, sit for a comfortable length of time. It can be as short as 5 minutes, or as long as you enjoy it. When I say enjoy here, I'm aware that practicing meditation is just that, practice. Practice is not always or hardly ever enjoyable, or can be. The point here is not to force yourself to practice longer than you can stand, so that you don't start to form a habit of hating your meditation sessions. At least think of it as you would doing schoolwork or having to study for something, and consider the long-term results you're looking to achieve and then act accordingly. If you've done this before in other areas like schooling, I mean, we've all done this kind of stuff. I can remember times when I forgot to meditate and I would sit up in bed for a minute or two before I went to sleep just to keep that mind sampling thing going. Also, just to keep me going. When I was beginning, I typically did 2 meditation sessions a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. That evening one didn't happen a lot more than the morning one, so that there were intervening circumstances that made me feel I was right and just, well, I can't do it today, it's going to be better tomorrow, I'll do it then. And also, let's talk about our expectations. The best advice is don't have any expectation, and that's easy to say but hard to adhere to. The fact is, simply, that you don't know what the result of meditation is like. I mean, enlightenment or awareness, you haven't had it. So whatever your expectations are, just by definition, they're not going to be correct. So don't try to imagine what you can't yet know. I can tell you from experience that my expectations of meditation have been and continue to be my greatest stumbling block to making any real progress. They were simple mistakes. I took it. I got it wrong on my part. And, I still manage to do it way too often. Now let's talk about experiences. And the worst, as in the most detrimental thing, is to have a really good meditation session and then expect or look for that to happen again on the next day or the next week or the next month. or the next years. And that's the killer. It's like having one good breath and then trying to hold it. Sooner or later, life's going to knock that breath out of you so that you can breathe again. So it's better to learn to let it go and just breathe out. Instead, it's far better to accept whatever the day brings, even if it is dull, down, and dreary. That's better than to cling to the past, trying to recreate a happy event or a good meditation session, expecting that if you don't have it, then you're falling behind. That's just not the way life is. Life is cyclic, up and down. So meditate with the dullness. Meditate with the anxiety that you have on hand, rather than compare what you have to what you once had before. Meditation is always about the now and never about the then. In fact, a major rule is, in Buddhism, this is a famous statement that's repeated endlessly, don't prolong the past. That's a slogan. Just forget about it. Comfortably accept just how it is right now for you, good, bad, or ugly, and meditate in those conditions. Accept the conditions that are, rather than expect or hold out for better conditions. You can't have the same meditation twice, because meditation is not about the experience itself, but always about your awareness in the experience. That is, how do you handle it? And that's the way to move forward. The mind can be seen as a kind of pendulum, swinging from being too excited to calm down on the one hand, to being too slow to wake up on the other. The time you want is right in the middle. And just right is about zero movement of the pendulum. Unfortunately, the pendulum swings far to the right and spends far more time on either side than it does in the center. So progress in meditation involves letting that pendulum zero itself out and come to rest in the middle eventually. That is letting the mind rest, and this takes time. Again, it's not about how good or how high you feel that day, but rather how you handle whatever the conditions that day brings. Remember, you're building a habit here. You're practicing. Now, something we'll call resting the mind. Before I launch into the ideal details for meditation posture and that kind of stuff, it's important to accent that you have to be comfortable. If the whole idea of shamatha meditation is to let the mind come to rest naturally, that means you have to rest. It took me at least 10 years, and that's the truth, to understand that when they said rest, when the teachers said rest, there's no such thing as like sacred and secular rest. Rest is rest. They actually meant regular old rest, just like we use the word, relax. In fact, I love this Tibetan slogan, relax as it is. And that it's so great. You have to relax and let your mind rest. Give it up. Here's a poem I wrote about that, a long time ago. The title of the poem is The Rest of the Mind. You cannot rest the mind, but you can let the mind rest. Just let go and don't mind the rest. Anyway, if you can sit in perfect yoga posture for meditation, that's wonderful. But if you cannot relax into that, not much is going to happen. And you don't need a lot of special stuff to meditate. A quiet place with perhaps a blanket under your legs to protect, the sharp ankle bones, or a pillow to sit on. That will do it. Of course, if you want to get fancy, you can order a square zabuton cushion to go under you, a big square mat, and a zafu, little round cushion to sit on. I've spent years studying various kinds of cushions, but I'll save that for another post. Anyway, the point is to just be comfortable. If you're sitting where it's cold or drafty, then wrap a blanket or a shawl around your back and legs. And sitting on a straight back chair is perfectly fine too. Now let's talk about the posture. Now what I'm going to tell you next is the traditional posture, but don't let it scare you. You can always start out by just sitting in a way that does not take all of your attention, but lets you relax. In fact, that's the most important thing. You need your attention for the practice. Yet, traditionally, there are 7 points to the posture, often called in the Kagyu tradition the 7-point posture of Virachana. Virachana here means emptiness, because this is your aerodynamic posture to sail into emptiness. I've yet to get there, but I'm headed that way. Okay, first, point number 1, cross-legged. Now, if you're one of those rare human beings that can sit in full lotus position, with each foot resting on the opposite thigh, no doubt that's the best. I can do it, but for like a minute, and then things start to ache. But the rest of us can sit cross-legged, with both legs on the floor, one in front of the other. Easy. Again, sitting on a straight back chair is also fine. Point 2, abdomen in. Pull your belly in a bit and tighten your anal sphincter and urethral muscles for just a few seconds. Pull them up and then relax them slightly. Just let them fall back. This prevents energy loss. Point 3, your back. Try to sit up with your lower back straight and hold that position, but gently. There is congruence between a straight spine and the subtle inner energies that run along the spine. When the spine is straight, the energy flows most freely. So do your best, but don't just straighten your back and just sit there and suffer. That's, you have to relax. Now let's talk about the hands. If you are a beginner, place your thumb on your palm at the base of your ring finger and close your hand into a very loose fist. Place your fists, both of them, one on each knee, palm down on the corresponding knee, and slightly above the knee, depending on the length of your arms. Now straighten the arms out, but not so much that they hurt. If you're already accustomed to sitting, then an alternate hand position is to place your 2 hands palms up against your abdomen, facing up just below the navel. Right hand on top of the left with the tips of the thumbs barely touching. This works too. Now let's talk about what's called the gaze. Direct your gaze to a spot on the floor a foot or 2 in front of you and hold that gaze gently. And it should be several fingers above the end of your nose. So you're not looking just off the end of your nose, you can look a little above and then down. And your chin, tuck your chin up close to your throat, just a bit, like you were making a double chin, but not that far. And finally, the tongue. Place your tongue up against the roof of your mouth, just behind your front teeth. This will help control the saliva. The teeth can be slightly closed but not clenched, and the lips very slightly parted. Now let's talk about sitting in meditation. I've shown you the posture. Now try to arrange yourself in that posture and then still sit comfortably. It's kind of a little like rubbing your forehead and patting your tummy at first, so don't strain yourself. If you can't do it, fully, then just relax and just sit normally until you can manage everything. It's most important to be comfortable, because otherwise you're not. To begin, just sit there for a minute. Relax until you can begin to feel thoughts rise. And at that point, take a deep, slow breath, breathing in. Follow the air as it comes in all the way down into your lower abdomen. Then slowly breathe out. After that, breathe normally, but keep your attention on the breath going in and going out. Continue breathing like this, following your breath with your consciousness for the duration of the meditation period. Now that's if you're focusing on the breath. If you're focusing on a pebble or a twig or a spot on the floor, then you're not following the breath, you're just letting the mind rest on the object. The main idea is that thoughts are going to begin to come, and you'll probably become distracted. This is not only normal, but it's to be expected. When you are distracted to the point of being literally carried away in the mind, that is, that you find that you have forgotten to focus on the object, whether it be the breath or whatever, but are thinking of lunch or appointment that you have later on. When that happens, you just catch yourself and let that thought go. Then very gently bring your mind back and focus it, rest it on the breath or the object. Don't spend 1 millisecond feeling sorry or worrying that you're not performing properly, because you are. This is totally normal. This is the practice. Gently drop the thought and drop any thought about the thought and any worry about your behavior, etc., and refocus on the breath or the object gently and continue following the breath or resting on the object. Try to remain relaxed, but not too relaxed, and certainly not tense. My teacher uses the analogy of holding a raw egg. If you hold the egg too tightly, it will break. And if you hold it too loose, it will fall and also break. So you have to hold it just right, tenderly. This is mindfulness. This is what we're trying to learn. If you are uncomfortable and like have physical pain, try to ignore it. If it persists, go ahead and shift your position to see if that helps. You're totally free to find the happy medium, which is you. And some days that might even be giving up. You have to stop altogether. You don't want to be a sissy, but you also don't want to associate meditation with physical pain. Be reasonable. Here's another poem that I wrote years ago. It's called Testing the Rest. And here we're talking about testing the rest of the mind. It goes like this. Learning to rest the mind really puts my practice to the test. So sometimes I just need to take a break and simply get some rest. That's also allowed. I received my shamatha meditation instructions from an authentic source. And my source was the Venerable Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who personally sat me down and taught it to me over about an hour and a half period of time. And I have been given permission by my root Lama of 30 years now to teach this to others, as his teacher did before that, all the way back down the lineage. If and when you can, it's worthwhile to meet a certified teacher in person and to get these instructions and the blessings that go with the instructions that stretch way back over 1,000 years or more. The authentic blessing is so very special. So if you can, make an effort to get it sometime. Anyway, you can find a list of authentic centers at kagyu.org, kagyu.org. I'm sure there are others that are fine too, and I just don't personally know them.